Parenting is a very difficult job because a child is very complicated. That's why it takes an adult to bring a child to this world. A child making a child, a teenager making a child is not going to do a good job. He can't do a good job because it is learning life itself. If the parent is just learning life, they're not going to do a good job with a child. Adolescence is probably the most difficult time in a human life because it is the change from being a child to being an adult. And usually adolescence fails because the soul does not get the maturity it needs to become an adult. A man and a woman that is independent, that is successful with money, with romance, with pleasure, with sex, and has a happy soul. Happy soul as an adult is extremely rare because adolescence goes wrong in humanity. There's a lot of negative forces in adolescence, in humanity, that makes for crippled adolescents for life. Most humans are crippled adolescents for life. What is it that goes wrong in adolescence, which comes about 11, 12 years old? Well, as a child, the child is extremely needy. It needs a lot of attention, a lot of love from the parent. A child that doesn't have this attention, that doesn't have a lot of love and is abandoned, closes up and becomes sick. A child needs a lot of attention. It needs a parent that is alive, that's with them all the time. Then the child begins to ask questions, thousands of questions, because it's stupid to life. A child is capable of eating its own shit and drinking its own piss. It's stupid to life. Why are there child-proof, enclosures to medicine and to toxic chemical kind of cleaners? Because a child is capable of licking anything, drinking anything, eating anything, and dying. The child is stupid. It needs a lot of answers. It needs a lot of knowledge about this world in order to start functioning properly. It's a natural inclination for the child to cling to mom and dad, to cling to mom's dress, and to take, the hand of dad and feel secure because it's insecure. The child knows it's in a dangerous position. The child is weak and it's stupid. Anything in this game that is weak and stupid is close to dying. So the child is not strong enough to live and it's not smart enough to live, and therefore is very needy for the parent. Parent has to be there and has to be there all the time. That's why the child is a burden. It's a burden of at least 12 years. It's not going to disappear, right? So if a parent is not ready for that kind of burden, it shouldn't have the child. It's not a doll. It's not a Barbie doll, or it's not a Ken doll. It's a serious event, and he needs a lot of attention. But what happens in adolescence is completely the opposite of what happens in childhood. As a child, the soul is extremely needy of attention and love and answers. As an adolescent, there's a rebellion, there's an independence that takes place. The child wants his own room. He wants his own posters, his own iPod. He wants his own clothing, his own haircut. He wants his own personality. Basically, there's a forging of its own personality. Some families don't allow for that. Some families think the adolescent is just a continuation of the child. That is not true. As an adolescent, around the ages of 11 to 13 years old, there's a tremendous pull to forge one's own personality, to forge one's own opinions, what somebody wants to do with their life. There's a head, there's emotions, there's an animal psyche, there's a physical psyche. Some people want to be cerebral. Some people want emotions flourishing. That brings different careers in mind. Not everybody wants to be a doctor or a lawyer. Obedience to the parent, blind obedience to the parent, brings a kind of death to the child and to the adolescence. We're not born to obey somebody else's dreams for us. We are born to obey our own needs and our own ambitions for us. So a good parent will understand what adolescence is and will be prepared for a rebellion from the adolescent. The adolescent is going to want more privacy, more independence. There's going to be some kind of rebellion. There's going to be an interest in romance and sex. Very, very strong in adolescence. That is not a mistake of life. Romance and sex are sacred fires of growth of the adolescent towards adulthood. Successful romance is very important to the adolescent. It's not important for the school. It's not important usually for the parent, but it's important for the adolescent. The adolescent wants to be successful in romance and even sex. Not children. The adolescent is not ready for a child, but the adolescent needs to experiment with sex to start understanding what sex is. But in our society, we don't allow for that. There's a tremendous sin surrounding sex, a fear of pregnancy, a fear of diseases. And that's wrong because sexuality is a sacred fire of growth of the adolescent. The child loves to see mommy bring him to school. As an adolescent, you don't want your mom to take you to school. You don't want your dad to take you to school because you don't want to be seen as weak. You want to feel strong, that you don't need mom and you don't need dad because you're your own person as an adolescent. You're starting to be an adult. And a good parent will understand that. If an adolescent is ashamed of being driven to school by a parent, that's normal because the adolescent is growing. In an adolescent, there's a need to be popular. There's a need to be admired. There's a need to be loved, especially by the opposite sex. A need to be cool. An adolescent who is not cool doesn't feel good, feels depressed. You can be having straight A's in math and straight A's in social studies and English composition. You're not going to have a successful adolescence just because you're good at school. A successful adolescent is somebody who is growing closer to adulthood, starts to understand power, money, romance, sex, the price of cars, the price of homes, and it starts to get ready for real success in real life, which the school system does not encourage the adolescent to be smart to life. An adolescent is going to start asking for a lot of stuff. An adolescent wants to express his own opinions. If an adolescent is always told no by the parent, no, you can't have this, no, you can't do that, no, the adolescent basically cannot grow and starts to shrink and become silent. A silent child or a silent adolescent is a sign of a dead soul. It's a soul that's not going to grow. It's just going to be obedient and depressed. Usually, it's going to take a lifetime to understand what the hell happened there. An adolescent has to understand money and the power of money in this world, and that money is earned. Money is not automatic. If the parents are wealthy and are giving the adolescent everything that he or she wants, that's a way to spoil the adolescent serious, because money is made through work, and therefore the adolescent has to have some kind of burden of work in order to get money. Free money is very bad for an adolescent because it gives them a sense that money is free, that the parents are wealthy, right? And that all the adolescent has to do is just enjoy life, and that's his only job. That's outrageous. There can't be a pressure from the parent on the adolescent to become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is that the parents decide for the adolescent has to choose his or her own career based on his sole interest. The adolescent has to have a genuine, authentic interest in his or her career. Otherwise, pleasing other people is basically a formula to become depressed for a whole lifetime. You can't do a lifetime career just to please your parents. You're going to be depressed for a whole life. You have to please your soul. You have to be excited about your job. You have to be passionate about what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to be depressed. Some souls have an intellectual fire and develop science, philosophy, this kind of thing. They're busy. Some are emotional type souls. They have an emotional fire and they're going to do emotional careers, careers in the arts or in beauty or this type of thing, in fashion. Some are into pleasure and some are into money and power, or even some are into bodybuilding or boxing or sports. So the souls are very different. They sometimes parents that are intellectual or emotional will have a sports person or a money person in the family. I mean, souls are different. We have to let the souls do what they like to do, because then they'll be happy souls. If we force upon them what we want because we didn't live that, and we have a dream for our child to do that, then that is a violence to the child and a violence to the adolescent. It is normal for an adolescent to experiment with romance and sex. The first partner in romance, the first partner in sex is not an immediate marriage. The soul needs experience in different romances and different kind of sex in order to understand what romance and sex are, and then make a choice for a mate. Old humanity didn't give room for that, especially to women. I mean, women don't have a choice. Their first romance, their first sex it's their husband. That is outrageous. But the positive about having a good parent that encourages the adolescent to have his own personality, his own opinion, to choose his own career, to have the romances that he wants to experiment, he or she want to experiment with, and the sex he or she want to experiment with without having babies, right, will liberate the parent from the adolescent. The adolescent, basically, if you let the adolescent become an adult, he's going to fly with its own wings very quickly. But if you don't let the adolescent grow into an adult, he's going to stay at home till 40. All right. This is what happens. There's a natural, I mean, you have to cut the umbilical cord slowly in adolescent years so that the child has a successful adolescence and becomes an adult and leaves. If you don't let that happen, the adult never happens and the adolescent never wants to leave.